Development Agency, January board meeting. Privilege of the floor. Marcus? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We reviewed our minutes last meeting. Is there any additions and/or corrections?
No, sir. Make a motion to accept as presented. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Treasurer's report, page 33.
Yeah, page 33 of your packet, just going on through our assets. In total, they're up $300,000, which there wasn't much change except for unrestricted, minor and loan funds minor. Total assets are down $5,000 from prior month. Our liabilities and capital are down $73,800 in total, with most of it being in the unrestricted fund portion. And our, let's see, liability, fund balance is up $68,900 from prior month. Page 34 of the packet. So a little over $85,000 a month is break even. Right now, because of some one-time fees we've collected, we're averaging $128,000 a month. But in reality, we're only collecting about $10,000 a month. When you look at, you take out all the one-time fees, so it may be a struggle to get to the total revenue budgeted. But there are some things still that haven't come in. Going down to our operational expenses, break even is $90,000 per month in expenses. We're averaging $74,000, so that's good news. We're spending considerably less per month at this point, 3 months in, than what the budget would predict. Page 36, our balance sheet. Our quick assets are about just under $5.3 million, which are up $38,000 from prior month. Our receivables are just under $1.6 million, which are up $80,000 from prior month. The negatives towards the bottom virtually are unchanged. The bad debt allowance and the micro debt, and then the prepaid expense, I kind of group those together. In total, our total current assets changed a whopping $2,000 from prior month up. So not much change. Our total assets are down $5,000 from prior month. Total current liabilities are down $73,800 from prior month. And page 46 of our packet. We agreed, we discussed micro paper around March. We don't have many past due accounts. Wright Brothers is still on here. Even taking that into account, it's about less than 1% of the total AR based on their delinquent payment, not their total amount due. Lyle, any further update or discourse with Bruce on?
We've had,
This is on again, off again.
we've had nothing.
We need to maybe consider some board action when we have time to actually revisit this one. Micro enterprise loan, Mr. Ricks, it looks like this kind of just is seasonal, just sort of showed up because they hadn't been on here before. Is there more to the story?
I think they've had some rush season, busy season.
Yeah.
Been a little delinquent in writing checks.
Okay, that's why I figured it was more seasonal because I really hadn't seen this show up.
First time
before.
they've ever been on.
Yeah.
There's also a possibility that they'll see an increase in their business with Alteri's closing.
Yeah, that is. So again, even taking into account the past due, it's very, very small percentage of the total receivables, so it doesn't look like any issue. So my only suggestion is at some point when we reconvene next month, maybe consider discussing this Wright Brothers again, because it doesn't seem to be going away or correcting itself.
I think if that happens, we need to have John Rutherford present.
Correct.
Yeah, they're the lead, right?
We didn't get anywhere last time. That's the treasurer's report. I would make a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
Further questions? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carries. We have no committees and no unfinished business. Talk to us about the bridge loan for Reality Virtual Sports.
You're done.
Either one.
You're looking at me, but John, I think, might know a little bit more on it, can sort of fill in, but.
Well, it's unfortunately still an incomplete picture. As you know, loan review looked at the project. Bill came in. We had what I thought was a very productive meeting with him. He discussed in detail what he wanted to accomplish. Loan review felt that it was a meaningful project, recommended to the board. The board considered the project and accepted the notion that we would participate with the Watertown Trust in providing each a loan of $40,000 to help them get the business established. The Watertown Trust agreed to take the lead on this because it is a city address, and so Don has been working directly with Bill over some period of time. At a recent trust board meeting, the board decided that it wanted to take a position on Bill's mortgage on his home, and as a result of that, the timing necessary to make that happen is going to be somewhat delayed. And Joe, I think, I'm not exactly sure just where you are on all this, but I think it was delayed long enough so we felt that it could.
Yeah, Bill called me concerned about it. I think he had some unrealistic expectations on how quickly we could close when we were taking security interest in real estate. I haven't even seen title documents yet, and my understanding is that, community, I think it's Community Bank that's the lead. We haven't seen their commitment letter yet either, so, we're at least well into February before we're gonna close.
Well, there's a couple of comedy of errors thing. For one, Bill wanted to take out a personal loan, and I think we had mentioned this during our meeting. In addition to all the equity he and his wife are putting in, he wanted to take out a personal loan. I believe he went to Community Bank, and Community thought, although I'm not sure why, that the bank would end up in a second position to the public agencies, which since I've been here, has never been the case. We've always, taken a subordinate position on those types of loans. But in any event, because the bank felt that they would be in a secondary position, they declined the loan. So that caused some delay while that got sorted out. In addition to that, Bill is facing a company, the company that he's going to buy the simulators from, has a special deal for him, which is available to him through the 31st of January. And after that, the deal goes off. Well, the savings on this equipment, according to Bill, are substantial. So if he buys before the 1st of February, then he saves X number of dollars. Well, part of the problem, when this first came to light, I did not realize the timing of this. I was told that it was an emergency, and that if we didn't immediately step in, he would lose that fairly significant discount. Since then, we've discovered that he can stretch this out until 31st of January, or 30th, whatever the deal is, and still take advantage of that. Complicating this, when we let Don take over the lead on this, he left on vacation, and so we've been trying, between Lyle and I, to negotiate with Bill, trying to figure out where in heaven's name we're on all of this. And at one point, we concluded that as a fallback, just to ensure that the project go forward, this board may want to consider doing a bridge loan. And Lyle has investigated, and I think it's, $53,280 or something like that?
$53,290.
$290.
And I will be receiving a copy of the bid that Bill has received, identifying the equipment and so on, which will use to file UCCs if it's approved.
If you'll accept all the confusion, of which we're a part, it appears as though, as a fallback, we could approve a bridge loan in the amount of $53,290, which would enable Bill to move forward and get his equipment, and then that loan would be taken out as soon as the permanent financing is established, loans and so on, and once the trust is comfortable with whatever Joe's working on for them, we could take that as a position at this point in time. It's a stopgap, and frankly, I'm a little uncomfortable in presenting this without a lot of detail. As I say, with Don gone, it's a little hard to get that detail, so.
Well, the detail on the project hasn't changed from what we gave you back at loan review and what was approved by the board. The only difference is this bridge loan to carry him through until the end of February, first part of March. So-
And how would we get paid back, so our total commitment ends up being the 40,000 that we agreed
When Joe
upon?
closes on the loan,
We'll claw
We'll
some
get-
of the
we'll get a check
Watertown
at that
Trust
time.
or
Yeah.
other
Right.
monies and pay ourselves back.
You'll be closing on 80,000 between us and the trust.
So,
Right.
but when we
We'll
close,
get the difference back.
when we
We'll get-
close, the equity will be
We'll get the
40
difference
and
back.
whatever.
Yeah.
At that time, we would take the bridge loan out, it would be part of all that transaction.
So Joe, this might be 2 or 3 months maybe at max.
I haven't seen anything yet. I haven't seen title documents yet. You know, when we just got the file
We're not
before
talking
the
years,
holidays.
right?
No, we're
months.
talking, we're talking at least the end of February is my guess.
So a couple months.
I was anticipating not to exceed 90 days.
That should certainly be enough time.
Wouldn't we want some sort of security though, like a commitment letter or?
There's a
something
little
based on
risk.
this whole
Well, there's a
thing?
little,
a little
there's a
risk.
little risk that, you know, we don't close on the other loan.
Well, don't we get first position on the equipment he buys?
Why
Well-
wouldn't we have first until the loan
We
closes?
should.
At this point, we would if we give
Yeah.
them
Oh,
money.
If we give them the money, we'll
we
do
will.
a file UCC on the equipment, yeah. Yeah, so we'll have that.
Nothing's easy anymore. It
And
just-
we can probably set it up out back if it doesn't.
I was gonna say, Don, you can pick up golf. Get some exercise during the day.
I mean, Bill couldn't negotiate with that vendor for another 30 days?
But mine's
John,
still not close.
you know, I can't tell you
Thing is,
honestly.
based on what Joe's saying, he's like, I've just gone through closing that I thought would be simple, it still took 2 months.
Well, this is
You
very
just don't
unusual.
have a control over when you're gonna close.
I can completely understand what he's going through. We have a similar situation with a couple of contracts at the equipment business right now, where the deal closes and the car deal is the same way. We're working on a deal with Rick Cascanet, and he's got the same thing going on
In the
with trucks,
month,
this 31-day window. You have to have a VIN number and a signed invoice by January 31, or guess what? And it's cast in stone. You can't, there's, working on a deal where we don't have an invoice because the piece of equipment is en route. It doesn't know if it's gonna get in the dooryard for January, and we can't get an invoice till it's dropped in our dooryard, kind of a thing. And it's a
Yeah.
$200,000 piece of equipment.
Just
So
two.
I can, when they say the 31st, I can, and
They do it for a reason.
yep, and it's this kind of year-end window that companies take advantage of.
From a formality standpoint, just one other thing to interject. Don did call me, and I agreed we should skip the loan review committee, which is where this should have probably. But from a timing issue, why waste another 2 weeks to put it in front of the full board? Because it would miss the whole timing issue that we're trying to potentially discuss and agree upon.
This is
So this-
unusual.
So this is gonna be, the loan that you're working on
Right.
is a loan against his real estate.
Right. Well, and on the equipment.
And personal guarantees.
Right, and this is a participation loan between the IDA and the WLDC, with the LDC being the lead. So they'll have a first position security interest in the equipment and the real estate if there's gonna be no bank financing. The WLDC's commitment letter says it's a second on the real estate behind Community Bank, but if that fell through, it'll be a first.
So for this bridge loan, realistically, we'll get first position on
We'll
the
be,
equipment.
yeah, we'll file a
But is
UCC
there
and
any
equipment he's
other,
buying.
any other
Yeah.
positions that, like, there's no other personal guarantees he's gonna be able to cough up between now and then?
Well,
He will give us a personal guarantee
It'll be
on this
personal
as well.
guarantee.
A
As
personal
lien on
guarantee.
the equipment, yes. We will be in first position on this equipment.
Okay.
until such time as it closes.
Which theoretically shouldn't depreciate, it should appreciate.
We're better off with a bridge loan than we are.
A little bit.
You probably are.
We might just
You're in a
keep
first
it that way
position.
and let Watertown Trust decrease their command by 13.
I think he's going to need the community bank commitment as
Yeah,
well,
no,
so at some
Yeah,
point,
so
No,
it's probably,
there's
it's
other-
probably gonna
there's
be a
other
second
funding.
on the house and a
there'll be a
first on the
second.
equipment.
There's
You
other
know,
funding.
be in a second position there.
So what was the exact 53,280, 290?
290,
53,
290.
And my only other, I guess, question was, I don't disagree with putting in a duration, but do we think 90 is enough so we don't have to revisit this?
Have to ask Mr. Russell.
It should be.
Okay, I mean,
I-
does it
I-
hurt
I
to
can
make it
I
120?
can make it 100.
I was gonna say, does it hurt to make it 120
Doesn't hurt
just to
to
give
be
a
on-
buffer?
Well, it's not to exceed, so. if it
Correct.
closes anyway.
If they close first, I mean, just as a suggestion, so we don't have to revisit this in a hurry in March.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
But I still come back, confidence level, going back to the loan committee and your interaction with parties, knowing.
That was a great
Their
application.
reputation, their accountability,
Mhm.
it's, you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with
Yeah,
it.
it's just, it's the
It's a
twist here,
formality.
it's the twist with buying the equipment, the actual loans can't be closed. So Lyle, what are the other particulars, any interest on this?
Yes, we'd have 5% interest. You would pay interest only on it, because we'll take the whole thing when we close.
So it'd be 5% interest only, up to 120 days,
Not to exceed
or
100.
closing, whichever occurs first,
Yes.
for 53,290.
So we would have to change the loan a little bit then, well, wasn't ours contingent
No,
initially
nothing will change on the
contingent
loan.
on the Watertown
That's a
Trust?
separate issue altogether.
This is just
This
giving
is a-
him a bridge loan, basically a line of credit, so he can buy the equipment, so they can close the loan in due course, because it seems like it's gonna take longer than the,
But Jonathan was saying it as a permanent thing, there be a
Because I
contingency?
thought our initial loan was
Yeah.
contingent on the Watertown Trust, really,
Right.
him getting money from the Watertown.
Well, it
Trust.
is, it's a participation loan, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there
And
would-
they've approved it.
Right, it's been approved, it's just a matter of what it's gonna take to get it closed.
all the paperwork hasn't shown up. I'll make a motion to approve a bridge loan of up to 120 days, or closing, whichever occurs first, for 53,290, 5% interest only. Did I say that right, Lyle?
Very good.
Second.
You're going to be elected treasurer again, you know that? You're starting to understand this stuff.
Be careful what you wish for.
Further discussion?
I'm a little curious, as he indicated, like on this purchase, should he bump beyond the January 31st deadline, the cost of that equipment? What's the savings, $10,000-$15,000?
All that's ever been described to me is substantial.
I can ask Bill.
Yeah.
We don't.
I bet
I
it's
don't
25 or
have
30% is my guess. It's probably like, because when he made the presentation, I seem to recall, it was like maybe a last year's model. There's some things where he was actually, it was in his projection of his business plan, where he was getting equipment at a good rate. And I don't know that he disclosed a percentage, but I wouldn't hesitate to think it wouldn't be 25 or 30%.
I can ask Bill, I'm sure.
Say a couple models.
If it was 10%, it'd be a lot.
Oh, yeah, that's-
53,000, and, 10% is still, that brings it up to 60-ish.
Typically,
Then once New York State puts its tax on it, that makes it even worse.
Okay. All right. On the motion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. New business. I guess more than new business, Counselor?
In your packet is the proposed revised recapture policy for consideration. I took the drafts that had been worked on and massaged them a bit. The one thing I did do is I amplified the provisions on the sales tax recapture to basically coincide with the statutory requirements that are out there, which are more stringent than the recapture requirements for other public assistance benefits, so.
Joe, the only one area that I'm not sure if it's a true circular argument or not is we talk about material factors and we point back to the UTEP, and I seem to recall the UTEP points to the recapture policy. And I'm curious if we can massage that language where I had offered very precise, language, which I'm certainly not married to. But should we consider something where material factors are, for lack of a better description, part of the resolution of why we're giving a pilot or incentive? So it's not in the UTEP, it's actually in whatever you want to call it.
Well, it probably should, I mean, the material factors are, and that's a subjective criteria that is going to differ by application.
That's why I'm suggesting at the time of the resolution of giving the tax incentives.
Well, it might, that's right, as far as actually stating in that resolution what the material factors are.
It gives
that
us more
support.
transparency at the time we're deliberating why we want to give an
And
incentive.
those are things that should be in the application as well.
It should be, and I remember marking up, trying to put that stuff in the application. We left it out for probably good reasons, because then the applicant would fill it out and they would kind of put down the material factors. But I think it's for us to determine what we believe the material factors are, and maybe even some of the affected taxing jurisdictions would have, a different feeling of what might be a preeminent material factor. So I don't have a solution for this. I just think there's got to be, I don't think we can point to the UTEP, because the UTEP are a bunch of generic statements of,
Right.
prosperity, jobs. They don't have like, I'm creating 20 jobs, or I'm using a distressed property, or
And
I'm
those are part of the details that would be, I would assume, in Lyle's workup.
in
that
the
goes-
cost
that
benefit
goes
analysis.
to your loan review committee, and that's all stuff that's gonna be
Yeah.
internal, that the staff's gonna be looking at when they review these
Yeah.
annually.
And I think it's probably in the resolution too, and
Yeah.
it's a public hearing.
I just feel like in the resolution would be the perfect place to put, if an applicant says they're gonna create 20 jobs and use a distressed property and do X and do Y, that's why we've deliberated to give a tax incentive, and that becomes a material
Well,
factor.
I think we would put that in the
That's
resolution.
part of the application, of course, and I believe it goes into the resolution.
Okay.
Ultimately approved by the.
Because right now, we're saying materials factors pursuant to the UTEP, and that might not be the right place to point to, but I don't really have a better suggestion.
Well, it
Other than
also,
the resolution for the
it also
project.
states material factors as relied upon by the board in granting the public
Okay.
assistance, so.
I just didn't want to get into a circular argument where we go back to the generic stuff of the UTEP.
Well, remember, this is a policy.
Correct.
Okay? The actual procedures are where the meat's gonna be.
Okay.
And,
And the only other comments I had made, which weren't put in here, and again, I'm not married to them, but where would the triggers be? Because in the recapture policy, when I looked at the other IDAs, and this is going back a couple of years ago when we started this process, it did appear, like say on jobs or say on taxation or whatever, there were thresholds that if employment factors fell 25% below or 30% below what was pledged, it would enact a trigger. I think right now we kind of just have a trigger, it seems like when we wish to.
Well, there are also annual reporting.
Yeah.
We do
Okay.
that, we're gathering job numbers and such like that, so we're monitoring that on a regular basis, and we'll be capturing that in sales tax as well, so we can monitor that, and it will see, in that case, if.
But just
if there's,
just put yourself in the applicant's
Right.
seat for a minute. They don't understand the trigger is. Like in
Well,
any of our documents or policies, again,
I understand what the trigger is because they promised,
Okay.
we're gonna do
Right.
this, this, and this,
Okay.
and we're looking at that annually.
But if they
And
promise 10
don't,
jobs and they end up doing 9,
but
it might not be a trigger.
Well, it's a factor that the staff is gonna analyze
Okay.
and report back to the board, or the appropriate committee. And, then you make a determination as to whether that should trigger a review. Because you want some flexibility in this. If they promise 10 and only give 9, there could be a darn good reason for it.
Mhm.
And you want to have flexibility not to have to act on that. But if they promise 10 and only give you 2,
Correct. That's a bigger difference.
right, so,
I know the language I took from one of the other IDs, I think it was something, a big number, like 25% or 30% below projected. If it was a very large variance,
yeah.
that would be the trigger, because that's a fairly significant,
This is my personal preference, but when you're dealing with a policy,
Mhm.
I think you're better off not having those hard triggers in there, but
Okay.
allow yourselves more flexibility. So.
So then from staff standpoint, hearing what council said, at what point does staff start looking at and alert the board? Frankly, I haven't been involved with the pilot yet in the whole time I've been on this board, so.
We're sorry about that.
You won't have long to wait.
So like, you know, job X comes in and they do the reporting and 10 jobs are pledged and all of a sudden you see 8. Do you just sort of like keep it to yourself or do we discuss it? Like, is there like an annual reporting to the board of what's going on? Because even some of the pilots that I've given before my time here, probably, some of them might be long gone.
I don't want to be over dramatic about this, but we live and eat this stuff
Okay.
daily. And we watch these businesses, as example John just brought up, we watch these businesses extremely carefully. And there are a lot of warning signs that pop up. If those warning signs indicate problems, then we start some quiet investigation. Oftentimes we'll get a call from somebody on their staff saying, hey, I heard that, you know, blank blank, I may not have vacation this week,
Yeah.
or whatever. And we look at these things very carefully. If it looks as though there is a significant problem coming, then we're going to alert you folks. And we've done this in the past. Typically, it's number of employees and what's going on with the employee base, but it could be other things as well.
In some projects we have coming up, material factors may not have very little to do with employees.
Exactly.
And that's the whole, I don't want to say subjective, but every project has different level of importance, why they're going to receive a tax incentive.
Well,
You know, the recapture policy takes into everything we do.
Mhm.
You know, whether it's a loan, whether it's, you know, and how things are, you know, are worked and like that. And there could be a lot of differentials in there. I remember back when we had one that, I mean, we had 125 jobs promised and I think they got to 89 or something like that, and, you know, we sat down with the company and there was darn good reasons why they just.
It was actually during the recession.
Right, 2008
Yeah.
is when we ran into the issue.
And, you know, so you
Those
gotta
are
look
my-
outside, you gotta look outside. You
I
know.
guess those are my only 2 points. I don't have a solution. I know this is a policy and I guess I'm too scientific. I like everything written out that it's black or white, there's no gray.
Gray is good here.
But life doesn't work that way.
No.
So, but nevertheless, I mean, I would like to see if it is in the resolution or in the cost benefit analysis, I would leave it up to staff to kind of keep the board.
Well,
So
actually,
you get annual reporting
We can
on
probably,
each pilot.
yeah, so maybe just sit back, so, I mean, typical pattern, we may work with a company, and maybe they're gonna be creating some jobs and doing some capital investment. Maybe that capital investment is all, besides our incentive, maybe some state grant funding. So we know the project's underway, we're touching base with them, I mean, they report the numbers to us annually, but we're kind of touching base with them every couple months anyway, see how things going. Because what may happen is that, you know, maybe over 3 years, they're planning to create 25 jobs, or 20 jobs. And, you know, you get to year 1, and maybe they plan to create 10 the first year, but maybe by the end of year 1, they've only created 6, because what we find out by, and usually we're keeping touch on them, right, we're not waiting for that annual report. Find out, oh, well, the manufacturer's behind on delivering the equipment that we need to start the new product line. So they catch up, so you kind of, so maybe by year 2, they're up to 15, so they may get up to the 20 jobs by the end of the 3rd year, because we're usually looking at over a 3-year period.
So would you share those reports with the board as you get
They're
them?
public, right? the Paris.
Paris is
reports,
public, yeah, you guys see the
They are
Paris
public.
reports,
They're-
yeah.
I think they're on our website still,
Yeah.
Peggy. They're hard to
Yeah.
find, but
They are.
they're very hard to
Yeah,
find.
but I think if we saw anything that was severe, as Don was saying, in the meantime, between waiting for the Paris report, we, you know.
Okay.
Well, that-
you know,
There's, you have-
Historically, they've always, you know, reported back to the board when there's any issues with
Okay.
something we've got out there.
well,
to staff.
there's a monthly
Staff.
report. When I report delinquent loan payments, that's for the board, take action or not.
Yeah.
We have another one that's been reported for 2 years. And that has to do with the pilot. It's reported to you every month. There are extenuating circumstances, so I guess that's the reason you haven't taken action. But, you know, at some point, we might have to justify
Yeah.
that.
there's,
Serious things are reported.
if I may, let me point out the fact that there are certain ironies in this development business. For example, sometimes we work very hard to help a company lose employees. And I know that sounds very crazy, but as we look at companies, we need to make them efficient and effective. They're competing with companies around the world. And so if a grant opportunity, for example, comes up to enhance their manufacturing techniques, and it's going to affect jobs in the long run, we weigh how that impacts what that decision is. If it makes that company more efficient, more effective, and likely to last longer, then we've got to try to help them do that. It's a matter of choices. And we see those ironies all the time. There's also the other issue where if we step in and penalize a company for not meeting some milestones, we actually contribute to the problems they're facing. And so we try to keep you informed on an individual basis. There are bellwethers that we all look at every single day. And if we see problems coming, we're going to let you know, because you're probably going to have to take some action, or at least consider some action. So, and flexibility is good, Rob. I know it's hard to see that, but in policies like this, it gives us an opportunity to look at these things in a variety of different ways. And then you guys sit down and say, okay, well, we should do it this way, or we should do it that way. And
I don't disagree that the flexibility is okay in the policy. I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of how do you get to fact-based decisions. That's the part I don't see and don't truly understand 100%.
that's our job.
Okay.
We have to take responsibility for watching the individuals to the extent that we can, or individual companies.
Because I knew there was the Paris reporting. I've seen that. When I first came on, I looked at a lot of that stuff to kind of understand it. And, as a side note, it wouldn't be a terrible thing to do towards the end of the years to recap some of those, the good and the bad, because sometimes I think the public should understand something we did 4 years ago still has a lasting impact.
Oh, absolutely.
It tends to get lost in yesterday's news. And I think there's a lot more good stories than bad stories, but they're
For
not
example,
told.
to your point, Rob, your loan programs, those monies are still working in the community.
Mhm.
We haven't necessarily presented
They're
a particular
they're
one today.
amplified many times what the loan value actually is.
Exactly.
So those are my only two comments. If they're kind of handled outside of the policy, and we can debate and discuss those later on when we get to a pilot, I would suggest that the material factors are really put into the resolution. Are great, that's perfect. And then just from staff standpoint, just, not a 1% deviation in employment, but like obviously if there's some common sense things, we alert us like we have been in the last couple months of some
We
things.
try to keep you up to speed.
I like the idea of bringing some of those material factors that are in the application all the way back to the final document,
Mhm.
because that's the one the public's gonna
Yeah.
be able to evaluate and determine, even though we can say, well, do we really want to be that specific? When you try and sell this to the public with cost and benefits and pros and cons, I think it's good to have all those.
They should be
right
in
there.
the
They
approving
shouldn't have to go back
package.
into
Yeah.
the application.
Yeah.
Right.
And you'll see what ABO is doing now, as they did with our sales tax thing. They're looking at what was approved, what was actually,
Mhm.
allowed in the end, so.
I hate to extend the meeting. You brought up Metro Paper.
I didn't hear Metro Paper.
Well, you didn't say it by name, but you had a comment to us not to pick up on it. They pay their bill in September, October for the annual?
Their pilot payment is due September 1st of each year. And it has one more year to run, the 2 years of arrears now.
Do we know any more about any negotiations going on to alleviate any of the unpaid, I think it's sewer?
Yes.
To help
And there's also-
Petawatt move forward?
There's also the
Paul-
county tax bill outstanding too from.
You bear with me. Let's do this, and then we'll go right back to that.
One quick question I had, the
Or-
last
I'm
paragraph.
sorry.
The last paragraph on preparing the annual report, the way that reads, is that for all projects in compliance and out of compliance, or just,
No, compliance report is what is the status of the compliance, so in or out for each project.
so both ways you're reporting?
Yeah, and that's right out of the statute.
Do we have to move to accept this?
Yes, we
Okay.
need
Yes.
I would move to accept as presented.
Do I?
Second.
Okay.
Further discussion? This is on our update of our recapture policy. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Just a note.
Paul, I want to get back to Paul right away. Okay, I'm sorry.
One quick thing
Sure.
on this policy, sorry. I want you to know that I'll be sharing this with AVO, as I had promised them, in a recent response to the sales tax issue.
I'll get back to your questions. No,
Is there any progress in moving this along to getting to where Petawatt takes over the facility and back taxes are paid and Metro's out from
Just, Paul, I can speak a little bit to that. The reason I was delayed a little bit getting in here this morning was that we're trying to arrange a meeting now with Mike Astafan and his sewer water folks up in Carthage, West Carthage, with Petawatt. And that as anticipated sometime in the next couple of weeks. Exactly when that will occur, I don't know. That will be up to Mr. Astafan and his group, but there is movement to try to get it resolved. Exactly what that will be, I really don't know. I can tell you that Petawatt has set up temporary facilities in the Metro building, and temporary is certainly the key here. They're using porta potties and so on. Not a very pleasant circumstance. So we're trying to get something resolved as soon as possible. Exactly what that will be and when that will be, I'm not entirely sure. So.
Are there other, I hate to say, are we looking for other locations for Petawatt to go if this doesn't pan out, so they can still be in the county? Have we tried to identify other locations?
They've been provided those, right? I mean, that's what they've chosen.
Well, and Paul, Paul's point is, how do we work these folks? And the answer is yes. We'll do whatever we can. If something happens with Metro, we'll do our very best. It's all relative to the proximity to large energy potential, as Bill knows. They're talking about a company that needs extensive computing power and therefore needs, a great deal of energy. So there are only a few places in the county that could possibly accommodate, given the building and so on. So we'll keep an eye on it. We're trying to make it happen. We spend quite a bit of time with Karim and his company, that's Metro side, trying to work through all the details. And unfortunately, at this point, it's really kind of out of our hands. We don't have a stake in this yet. They've not asked for a pilot. We have no loan program underway with them. So at the moment, we're just trying to be facilitating it.
well, our stake in there is to get those pilot payments paid.
Well, sure, absolutely true.
Used another.
Their pilot
asset within the
expires
county.
this year, doesn't it?
Underutilized.
One more year to go.
One more year.
This September will be the final billing.
Okay.
Anything else for the IDA?
Just one quick question, Dave, is the Turning Point still projected to come before the board next month?
As far as we know, yeah, we're gonna be working, talking about Hageman, he's gonna be trying to set up a meeting with the county legislators here.
We need to get the public hearing scheduled too.
Yeah, we do, yes. we do that.
So that
I'll
hasn't
talk
been
to you
set
about
up?
that later today.
That hasn't been set up for the county yet? Dave?
No, no.
Okay.
I talked, Bob, before the just with the holidays coming in, it was a hard time getting legislators together, so.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor, aye?
But Robert, this had, I mean, it has been approved by the school board, the village, and I believe the town board, they're meeting on Monday, so.
Okay.
With that, I'll call to order